Few commanding generals in the history of warfare have been as green and untested as George Washington when he took over the American rebel army on July 2, 1775. It had been 17 years since he last wore a military uniform, and even then he had been just a provincial officer with 5 years of limited experience in frontier combat during the French and Indian War, always serving under British superior officers. In that earlier war, young Colonel Washington certainly demonstrated courage, durability, and more than a little luck, the trait that Napoleon would most cherish in his lieutenants. At age 23, Washington was with Major General Edward Braddock in 1755, when the British suffered a devastating defeat on the Monongahela River near today's Pittsburgh. The young Virginian survived 4 bullets through his uniform, another through his hat, and 2 horses shot dead beneath him, before dragging his mortally wounded commander across the river and riding 60 miles for help in covering the British retreat. That ordeal, which left more than 400 British dead, including men scalped or burned alive, gave Washington a tincture of indestructibility, while convincing him that, as he wrote, the all-powerful dispensations of Providence had protected him beyond all human probability. But it hardly prepared him for leading the new Continental Army. When he arrived in Cambridge, outside Boston, 2 weeks after the Battle of Bunker Hill, it's possible that not one of the 17,000 soldiers now under his command, nearly all of them New Englanders, knew what he looked like. Imaginary portraits that bore no resemblance to Washington would be sketched and printed in newspapers after Congress appointed him general and commander-in-chief. What the troops actually saw as he rode into town on that rainy Sunday was impressive. At 43, he was over 6 feet tall, but so erect he seemed taller, with wide-set blue eyes, fair skin lightly spattered with smallpox pits, and fine hair tied back in a queue. He was nimble for a large man, and so graceful in the saddle that some reckoned him the finest horseman of his age. His personal appearance is truly noble and majestic, being tall and well-proportioned, a doctor in Cambridge wrote. His dress is a blue coat with buff-colored facings, a rich epaulet on each shoulder, and a black cockade in his hat. From that day, and through the first couple years of the American Revolution, we will see him struggle to avert catastrophic defeat, to hold his army together, and to be a commander in deed as well as in title. Great responsibility would enlarge him, but it would take time. He admitted that his 5 earlier years as a provincial officer left him with the want of experience to move upon a large scale. He knew little of cavalry, artillery, the mass movement of armies, or how to command a continental force. For every moment when he drew his sword or spurred his horse to the sound of the guns, there would be 1,000 administrative moments, dictating orders, scribbling letters, delving personally into the smallest aspects of his army's operations, from the number of camp kettles to the quality of bread. He was instinctively, brilliantly, a political general. In his first month as commander-in-chief, he wrote 7 letters to Congress acknowledging its superior authority while maneuvering to get what he needed. More letters went to colonial governors and other civilian leaders. He was aware that placing a Southerner in command of this predominantly Northern army was a fragile experiment in continental unity. My greatest concern is to establish order, regularity, and discipline, Washington wrote Congress. My difficulties thicken every day. Barely a month after taking command, he complained of an unaccountable kind of stupidity among his Massachusetts officers. New England troops, he added, are an exceeding dirty and nasty people. In truth, an immensely wealthy man, with well over 100 slaves to tend his business at Mount Vernon during his absence, could hardly comprehend the sacrifice made by most of his men in leaving their families, shops, and farms. These first weeks and months required intimacy with his army, building the mystical bond between leader and led. Who were these men? What did they believe? Why did they fight? How long would they fight? That army would become both the fulcrum on which the fate of the nation balanced and the unifying element in the American colonies, a tie that bound together disparate interests of a republic struggling to be born. It was the indispensable institution led by the indispensable man, and the coupling of a national army with its commander marked the transformation of a rebellion into a revolution. For that vital link between commander and commanded to be forged imperishably, Washington would have to know in his bones, and the men would have to know that he knew, what was risked and what was lost in serving at his side.
On sale now, The British Are Coming, Rick Atkinson's epic story of the American Revolution. Available from the shops at Mount Vernon or wherever books are sold.